Now we come to day 3, and our distinguished lecture is by Dr. Sushruti Santhanam. She's going to be talking about an overview of the Abhyasa, Gana, Paddhati in Carnatic music, texts, interpretations, and interventions. So Sushruti ji brings together 3 very different worlds of inquiry and practice, which include a 3-decade-long immersion in Carnatic music, a PhD in history, and a deep and long engagement with artists and artisan communities. Her special focus is on the form and contemporary use of tradition in Indian knowledge, arts, and craft practice. Sushruti heads the Center for Arts, Society and Policy. She is a Carnatic vocalist and a teacher. She designs UG courses on heritage and design thinking and traditional performing arts. She writes and curates workshops and is continuously engaged in working with artist communities across India. So we are really, really looking forward to learning from you. But before that, we would like to honor you. Srinivas ji, please come on the stage.
Sudha Purna Kumbham Suvakshoja Kumbham Sudha Purna Kumbham Prasadavalam Prapunyavalam Prasadavalam Prapunyavalam Sada Sendubimbam Sada Noshtabimbam Bhaje Sharadambam Ajasram Madambam Bhaje Sharadambam Ajasram Madambam. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. My introduction must first include that I am the disciple of Sangeeta Kalanidhi Srimati R. Vedavalli. I am also her daughter. And hence, music is what I was born into. For the longest time, I knew everything in the form of learning only through the sound of music. And since I was born in the family of a very active and very thinking Carnatic musician, I think the first thing I might have heard was very complex Carnatic music. I grasped it. That's how I did it. For a very long time, I didn't even know what I was singing. There was no language, there was no name to it. I might have sung things which other people thought was complicated. And often the phrase that was thrown at me was, in Tamil they say, "Meen kuttiki neendu solli kudukanama," which is, if you are born as a fish, and you're a little fish, does somebody need to give you swimming lessons? Because that is the water, that is the air, that's how you're structured, that's how you know the world. And that's how I grew up. I did not know anything else. I went to school and, I studied, and then when it came for the time, when I was, say, 7 years or 8 years old, when one begins to actually realize that one is doing something called music. Because so I grew up in a Gurukula. My mother had many students, and some of them lived with us, and I did not know that they were not my sisters. So relationships were also then defined only by music. And everybody called my mother Amma. And I knew some people called my father Mama. That is how I knew that they were not my direct siblings. But other than that, they could have actually just been part of extensions of my own self. And much later, I realized something, which is till when I was about 10 years old, I would sing the Carnatic composition, for those of us who don't know what it is. The Carnatic composition has Pallavi, Anupallavi, and Charana. So when I was 10 years old, I realized I know the Pallavi of some songs and the Anupallavi of some songs and the Charana of other songs. This became a problem for me. Then I started asking why. Because I heard somebody learning the Pallavi, and then I went to school. And when I came back, somebody was learning the Anupallavi of some other song. And so I picked it up. And then later in the evening, somebody came and they were finishing a certain composition, so I picked up the Charana. And then when I was 10 years old, and my mother never said anything. She never brought me and said, okay. So I may have been 8 or 9 years old. I complained to her. I said, you never taught me. She said, what is there? It will come. And so I made it a point to sit with people who were then singing, the leftover Charanam and the Anupallavi of something that I knew a Pallavi for. And then I finished learning it. I also learned from their mistakes, how not to do it. Because I heard constantly the guru correcting the students for all kinds of mistakes, because each student came with a different kind of a mistake. Each student came with a different kind of ability. So I had a grand view of abilities, capabilities, skills, and mistakes. And this continued for a very long time. And I think it gave me a capacity to learn everything like this. I went on, and in school, I decided I needed more time for practice. So I decided I won't go into the science stream and do an engineering or something. So I went and did. Some nearest college was some Stella Maris college. So my mother said, don't go very far. So nearest college, I went and enrolled in sociology. And then my world split. And then I said, what is this? Why are they describing us like this? That the Dvaita that happened in my consciousness was very violent. Until I was 18 years old, I thought difficulty was in learning, difficulty was in making mistakes and correcting. Difficulty was, from the beginning, the word Sangeeta Dharma is all the time, people are talking about it. I'm running around, in the parking lot of big sabhas, Raga Lakshana Granthas are being discussed, and somebody is saying, no, Lakshya is more important, Lakshana is more important, this Pathantara, that Pathantara, this school, that Sampradaya. I'm alive to the conflicts here. Then when I went into sociology, I was told that this entire community is wrong. And then I learned, I said, I have to go and find out what is wrong. Because to me, it seemed right. To me, it seemed complete. To me, it seemed in a way that I could take Sangeeta Dharma and map it onto all forms of Dharma, of knowing what is right and what is wrong, of how to be disciplined, of how to be, how to recover after making a mistake. Of how to hold on to ethics, of how to learn, of how to teach, of how to maintain a decorum. Because the teaching did not just include music, the teaching included a whole lot of things. From what you have to eat, how you have to hold yourself, how you speak to somebody, what is the volume of your voice when you speak, how you wear your clothes. Yesterday, somebody was, I think, Jayashree ji's presentation was speaking about those so many different methods used and captured by, in Shastra of, the epistemological methods. So all of this was used. Sutras were given to us. So the teacher would say, and I'm just paraphrasing this. The way you dress is the way your raga alapana will be. What is the connection? It is where you draw the line, how much you will allow yourself to please and how much you will allow yourself to be on the side of what is the lakshana. Not what is right, of what is the rule. There is a rule and there is experimentation. And there is a line in between. And as a person, you approach everything with the same attitude. So the way you dress will be the way you will sing your alapana. Because that is the amount of leeway you will give your side both ways. But this is a sutra. And as so many people have said yesterday, you don't question. You cannot arrive into this thinking through critical thinking, which today is touted as a very big thing. You don't know. I mean, how do you know what this is? So hence you wore a certain kind of clothes and you sang in a certain way because your guru asked you to. And that did not mean you covered your face or anything. It's a sutra. It is given to you. You can choose. I want to err on the side of experiment is also something you can choose. But that's what it is. You have chosen. It's your choice. And this the Guru told you. This is how all this I'm saying is I'm not into the whole talk on pedagogy yet. This is how I arrived at this questioning. This is how I arrived at asking, where is music as a knowledge system located in society? What does it do for us? Because we have a lot of storytelling in Carnatic music. We have a lot of, Carnatic music itself is a form of storytelling. It carries so many Puranic stories, Sthala Puranas, and so on and so forth. But there is a lot of storytelling in the learning of Carnatic music. Because a lot of lakshanas cannot be explained to a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, even a 14-year-old. It cannot be explained. And I'm talking about this at the learning age level, not at the actual age level. Some people, even at 40, 50, you cannot explain things to them. So there is a lot of storytelling, but you open out the stories, and then you'll see that there is pedagogy in it. So what I thought I'll do is I'll quickly go through all the texts that have said various things. But since I represent practice, I'm more interested in how things that have been elements that have been actually put in front of us through these texts have been continuously interpreted. And in the pedagogical method, teachers actually intervene very actively. Because the purpose of music has been set. There is no question about that. We all know why Indian music is sung. Tyagaraja Swami, we call him Tyaga Brahma. He's one of the 3 great Vaggeyakaras of Carnatic Sangeeta. And he's revered as a saint. Tyaga Brahmam says, Sangeeta Jnana Vihinulaku Mokshamugalada. So he directly says, if you don't have knowledge of music, will there ever be a chance for you to aspire for moksha? A very important text for us is an early 13th century text called Manasollasa. And Someshwara, who writes this text, says, Shikshartham, Vinodartham cha, Moda sadhanam, Moksha sadhanam cha. This is the purpose of music. And we still continue to believe, whether we do it or not, or all those things are of secondary importance. We continue to believe, and in our storytelling, we at least continue to say that this is what it is. But Shiksha, Vinoda, Moda, Moksha, these are all, to a musician, if this has to be achieved, what is the work that has to go on? It's very easy for me to say that this is what the music that I sing represents. But how should I be? Is a very big question. And that is the training. So there are two things that for me stood out when I looked at, in my later years, when I came to looking at all of traditional music across India. There is what is called Shastriya Sangeeta, which explicitly aligns itself to texts that have been written, to musicological analysis that has been done. They're very conscious of what has been done, and they want to actually bring that into expression. The other thing is musicality. The training for your capacity to actually sing or play an instrument is a very different skill. Now, in the teaching of music, both these things have to be brought together. Whereas the Shastra is something that the musician will do with a very great even desire, so that the music is correct and so on. Musicality also reaches out to the society. Because if you don't have the Sahridaya, if you don't have an audience that actually wishes to be affected by you, it does not willfully surrender to the experience of music, you cannot do anything. You can be a great Shastrajna. You can even be a great musician. So, our elders actually made sure that constantly in society, that Sahridayatva is also being developed. That an exposure to these kinds of musicalities was also constantly developed. And so these are called Deshiya Parampara of Sangeeta. So whereas there is something that can be explained with Shastra, it can be appreciated by everybody in society. So I just want to sing something and show you of how things translate from one location to the other. And I am not going to use words like classical music, folk music and all here. They don't work for us. I think at some point we should stop using them. There is Laukika Sangeeta and there is Shastriya Sangeeta. Classical also is not a word, I don't know. It doesn't stick to us. Shastriya Sangeeta and Laukika Sangeeta is there. And Carnatic Sangeeta has both in it. It has Shastra and it has Laukika Sangeeta also. Same Tyagaraja Swami, who creates extraordinary examples of Vaggeyakara Sangeeta, has also created small songs which our mommies and our aunties sing in weddings. So Laukika Sangeeta and Shastriya Sangeeta are both part of the same tradition of musicality. And hence, maybe for people who come from words, this is a bit disruptive. But I think it's time for this disruption to happen. Because otherwise we cannot get to the foundation of an Indic understanding of Indian music. నలుపు నలుపని ఏరు నవ్వేరు జనులల్ల ನಲುಪು ನಾರಾಯಣ ಬಿರುದೇ ಗದಾ గరుడు గంగాపురము శివుడు ధరించిన నీలవర్ణము కడువా నలుపే గదా చుక్కాలు తెలుపైన సూర్యుడు ఎరుపైన చూసేటి నయనాలు నలుపే గదా గరుడు గంగాపురము శివుడు ధరించిన నీలవర్ణము కడువా నలుపే గదా ಉಳ್ಳವರು ಶಿವಾಲಯ ಮಾಡುವರು ನಾನೇನ ಮಾಡುವ ಬಡವನಯ್ಯ ಉಳ್ಳವರು ಶಿವಾಲಯ ಮಾಡುವರು ಅನ್ನಪೂರ್ಣೆ ವಿಶಾಲಾಕ್ಷಿ ಅನ್ನಪೂರ್ಣೆ ವಿಶಾಲಾಕ್ಷಿ ಅನ್ನಪೂರ್ಣೆ ವಿಶಾಲಾಕ್ಷಿ Dasari mama mama magagari. This is the basic material. There's one coming from the absolute, what we will like to call folk tradition. One is coming from the Basavanna tradition of Karnataka, and one composition is by Muthuswami Dikshitar, the high Vedantin. Music does not discriminate. If you know that there's Rasanubhava in Dasari Mama Magagari, anybody can use it. It's completely democratic. So, this is the tradition. Having said this, many streams and many sampradayas of how to approach this kind of musical material have evolved. Some have said, let us examine the tones and the frequencies and the microtones. Some have said, this is nice, we'll just use it. And all of them, I mean, there is no right and wrong in this. We do this in cooking, we do this in science, we do this in engineering, right? So, the classification or the nomenclatures of what is what kind of music does not come from who did it. Music is a very democratic, its material is available to everybody, and everybody in India have used this. It has been our way. So if this is the case, then as things got more and more complex, how did people develop a pedagogy for this? Developing a pedagogy just to transmit musicality is, in that sense, easy. Keep singing. People sang in temples, people sang in weddings, people sang at home, baby is born. There was music to make the baby, eat. There was music to make the baby sleep. There was music all around. And hence, like I learnt, any baby could have learnt. And today, when parents bring their children to me and said, we want this child to learn music, and I ask the parents, do you sing? They say, no. Because they think singing means training. What I am asking is, do you have musicality in you? Do you sing anything? Something has to be sung. Because if a Nalupu Nalupaniyeru is not there, or a Ullavaru, Shivalaya Maduvaru is not being sung on the street, how will I sing Annapurna Vishalakshi? Who will listen to me? Who will know what I am singing? I can be a great Shastrajna and I can say, oh, this is constructed grammatically perfectly, but what am I doing it for? Because musicians have this great responsibility that the attainment of moksha is not for us. Music is that kind of thing, and so is dance, and so are art forms. we have to do this so that it can be a marga for everybody. This is our job. Our job is to make sure that this marga is set so well, and we are not setting it because we can't intellectualize. It is not in the capability of any individual musician to actually set this marga. We may have the capability of following it. That's all we have. And when the elders say Sangita Dharma, they are simply saying, make yourself well enough, good enough, so you may follow the path. Path exists. Path is Sanatana. And so, Abhyasa Gana Paddhati is just to make yourself capable of following the path, so that it may lead to Rasanubhuti, that may then finally through bhakti, because that is what for Carnatic Sangeeta, that is the ultimate goal, is to create the essential experience of bhakti. And through that bhakti, people may actually find a possible way to their moksha. And that depends on the people who are listening and singing in. That is not a guarantee, that's not a promise. But keeping this domain alive is a promise that we are giving. And this is the principle, this is what we are taught. The discussion on whether we do it or not is immaterial. So if you bring questions of whether it is happening now, that's an irrelevant question now. This is what we are supposed to be doing. And hence, one of the most important event for Carnatic music that happened was in the late 18th and 19th century. The Vaggeyakara tradition peaked. Vaggeyakara are people who have brought Vak and Geya together, bound it in Lakshana, and made it usable and approachable for everybody. So they are the greatest among the musicians that we know because they gave us a tool. It is almost like they looked at us and said, how are these people going to survive? They don't know anything. And then I think British colonialism was as much part of it because it was already there, and these were people who were seeing the beginning of the colonial era in Tamil Nadu, where all three of them were. And hence, already I think there is an observation on what is happening to society. And then in their eminent compassion, they bring the Lakshanas together. And they weave this beautiful, and it's not like Vaggeyakaras have not been there, because the Lakshana for how a Vaggeyakara should be, what kind of skill you need and all is there in the Granthas. But for us, for our tradition of music, Shyama Shastri, Tyagaraja and Muthuswami Dikshita, these three saints have given us a template within which we can do this complex maneuvering of taking the Lakshana and turning it into moksha, or aspiring for it. So, can't it be done through just knowing the Lakshana? Yes, it can, if that is your path. But for most of society, for common people, this becomes very hard. And hence, the question was also asked of who is listening. What is the kind of musicality and how should it be transferred to the listener? Who are the Rasikas? Rasikas are, you cannot, right? Because it's a very diverse society. People with diverse Purusharthas live here. And hence, if you have to have a theory of music that reaches out to these diverse people who will, in terms of their appreciation of what rasa, and it will go up and down. So you have to have a system where you develop capability of an expression of all kinds of rasas. And that was what was kept in mind. But the bhakti movement influenced this deeply. And they made a conscious choice at a time when Shrungarapadas and Natakas were very, very, very vibrant and very dominating as compositional forms. They said, let us bring the whole focus back to bhakti. And in a way that they covered all ground. You want to go through Vedanta? There is Vedanta. You want to go through Krishna Bhakti? There is Krishna Bhakti. You want to go through Nityotsava Paddhati? That is also there. You just want to have a good time. 16, 17, 18. Women want to get around and sing for the bride and groom? That is also there. Let us just cover all bases, they said. So what we hear today as Carnatic music is a fairly modern product, but of a lot of thinking that has gone on. And two things people have done, which reflects in the Abhyasa Gana Paddhati. One is they realize that there is something that will always be Purva Prasiddha, what has been received through texts and through the Guru Paramparas and through the memory of society, because people are listening. So the Rasika is a very important part of this. And then there is the Adhuna Prasiddha, because things will change. The context will change. And as performing artists, responding to changing in context is also part of the dharma. So all the thinking that goes on is how to negotiate between Purva Prasiddha and Adhuna Prasiddha. And if this has to be done, then you need a strong capability to do this. And so at this point, I really want to say something from the texts. Today, Shastri Sangeeta is also called Raga Sangeeta, because the idea of Raga is very central to it. It was not always like this. Raga is a thing that is only 1,000 years old, 1,200 years old, or more or less. Before that, there were other classifications of how musical material, or the notes and the swaras and the frequencies were organized. There are grama, jati, other kinds of formulations. So Manasollasa talks about it. One of the most important works for us is the other 13th century work called Sangeeta Ratnakara, written in Devagiri by a Kashmiri Pandit called Sharangadeva. He's a great taxonomist. He has classified, and his commentator actually says, Kallinatha, 100 years later, says Sharangadeva's work is Lakshya Sangeeta, which is the practicing music has run ahead of the Lakshana. And Lakshana has not been written, and hence he is catching up. In the 13th century, Sharangadeva, Kallinatha says it looks like Lakshana is catching up with the Lakshya. So change has always been constant, and people have always dealt with change, and they have dealt with it in the most graceful manner. So Raga Sangeeta is something that is 1,000 years old for us. And Raga Sangeeta hence now is the established framework within which we work. So we know, people who know music, the minute I say Melakarta, they know what it means. So there is a formula where they say there are 72 major ragas. They are called Janaka ragas, and each of these parent Janaka ragas have multitudes of Janya ragas. And those Janya ragas can actually develop and develop and develop. Still people are discovering ragas. Whether that is dharma or adharma, that's a separate discussion that people will have. But it's all, it's all part of the whole negotiating with change thing. So now this 72 was at some point 20. And at some other point it was 15. And so our understanding of what vocabulary we have has also changed in the last 1,000 years. We had 20 ragas, now we have 72. 20 Janaka ragas, and their Janya Ragas were there, now we have 72. However, we don't elaborately sing all 72. There are tonalities that create a rasa. And Vaggeyakaras have chosen certain tonal combinations that create rasas that are suitable for bhakti and suitable for the material that they're trying to express. It's very important to make note of this, that composers actually are interventionists. They say that society's emotions have to go in a certain way. So, predominantly they pick tonalities that create emotions that are suitable for cooperative living. And then bhakti. The bhakti marga is always in the background. Now, somebody was asking me, I just want to say, if there is a term that is not getting across, if you have a question, don't wait till the end, because this is a discussion. It can go on. In about 5 minutes, I will just move to the padhati itself. But before that, if there is anything you want to ask, you can. Somebody was asking, this nowadays people say bhakti is not, why everything Carnatic music has to be bhakti oriented? The question is, why not? Because we don't understand what an expansive idea bhakti is. We don't understand what a powerful tool bhakti is, whether it is in science or engineering or building a bridge. Or without devotion, what can you do? Without surrender, without the intellectual humility that yesterday she was so beautifully talking about. How can you build a bridge that ensures that every person for the next 100 years is safe? If you have to build things that last, if you have to build things that create those central ideas in society, you need bhakti. And that bhakti, our saints and our composers and our musicians and all of the other people who thought that this service has to be done to society, they put that in the center of all their activities. And hence the question of why bhakti and why not, why can't I compose a song about an electric train? Okay, Tesla song, you create. I mean, what? After all, the music is so expansive, it can do anything. See, you don't look at it like that. You want to create a song about Tesla, in Carnatic music, you can. No, because Carnatic music, and later I will come to it, allows for the use of complex language. There is a structure to this musicality that allows for complex languages to be used, because Carnatic musicians already sing in Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, Marathi, Sanskrit, also Hindi. All the languages basically that M.S. Subbulakshmi has sung in and more can be sung, because its musical structure allows for the vak, for complex language structures to be embedded in it. And hence, you compose in Russian, so what? But should that what Carnatic music must do for its own community? That's a question that the community has to decide. Not anybody from outside. That's my short answer to that question. So the Rasika, I just want to touch on this before I move forward. The Rasika have also been classified in the Shastras. Some of them will be perceptors who will demand great, sublime, balanced music. Some will demand intellectual clarity. They will be the Lakshana Vidwans. Some will just look for a very sweet, pleasant experience. Some will look for excitement, which we see in December season. If you go, a lot of excitement is happening, right? A lot of music where people are watching like they're, watching a horror movie at the edge of the seat. Some people require brave music. Actually, I have worked with a community in Rajasthan. They're called the Manganiyar community. Their entire music is meant for war. Texts that record their music actually say that the musicians used to go to the war front and sing, and before the war is declared, the army is standing across, and before the signal has been given, charge, the musicians have sung, and some of the younger warriors cannot hold themselves back. They rush into the war front and get killed. That is the kind of music that is. If you listen to Manganiyar music today, they are calling them Sufi singers. No, they are not Sufi singers. They are the opposite. They are actually, they are motivating you to go to war. So you see the throw of their voice, their compositions, the energy in the voice, the movements, that's meant to create a certain rasanubhava. That Carnatic music cannot do because it's not meant to do it, simply. Then there will be people who want Sringara Padas. They are in separation. They want to further drown themselves in that kind of emotion. Desire is a very important thing that music was used for historically. Then there is the enlightened seeker of the spiritual goal. They want a certain kind of music that will allow them a state of consciousness in which they can do what they do. And then there will be people in the society who want to simply celebrate. Musicality, the musical structure actually allows for celebrating auspiciousness, what we call Mangalam. We have a kind of compositions in the south which is called Mangalam. They are sung in 4 or 5 ragas only. Mangalam cannot be sung in any other raga. It is to say that we have all come together and this auspicious occasion has happened and now it's coming to an end, and let's all go back with that sense of contentment. So that Mangalam is a carrier of a sense of contentment. All of these things have to be expressed in the voice. Or if you're a Vaggeyakara, in the way that you use your fingers on the instrument. So a music has to have, should be rasodhara, bhava vibhavita, shravya, lakshanabadha, lakshanusara. All these principles have to be taught to the student. So, what do we have as musical compositions that we train for? 2 types basically, Nibaddha and Anibaddha. In Carnatic music, the Nibaddha compositions will be like a Prabandha, Gita, Kriti, Varnam, anything that is bound by a tala, not just by meter, not just by laya, but actually cycles of rhythms. Yesterday, Shastriji did much of the job for laya for me. I have nothing to really repeat. So those cycles of talas with its complexly structured sub-elements, if you have to put a composition into it, it is Nibaddha. Anibaddha is where you remove the tala. There may still be an inbuilt laya, but there is no meter and tala. The alapa, for instance, what we call alapana, is Anibaddha. Now, this is what we have as material. 3 important elements we have, which help us recognize this is Carnatic music. One is the gamaka, and the foremost thing is the gamaka, the tala and the Vaggeyakara kriti. These things. This is, now I'm talking from the point of view of learning, not performance. So, Swarasya kampo gamaka ityuchate. You can just simply say If you move the swara, it's gamaka. But no, it is not that simple. What the swara means. Hold on. Without singing, if I speak, then it is not dharma. Sa re ga ma pa da ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga re sa. This is a scale. It is called Shankarabharanam. But this is not Shankarabharanam. This is just the scale of the Shankarabharanam. These are just points that indicate that, okay, these are the notes that are going to be used. But this is not already Shankarabharanam. If you think of Shankarabharanam as having an affect that will create a rasanubhava, this is not that. So to this, you add a little movement. Sa re ga ma pa da ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga re sa. Swara raga sudha rasa yuta bhakti swarga pavarga mura. So this comes from just sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, but with a very complex process of connecting the two. How is it connected? Because there is a lot happening between sa and re and ga and ma and pa and dha and mi. There's a lot of space in between which we think does not exist. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa are just stones in a deep ocean of music. Often we are just stepping on those stones and going, but if you actually are daring enough to jump where your guru asks you to jump, not where you are not supposed to jump, then you'll go. Where your guru asks you to jump, if you jump, then that whole essence of music comes. And this cannot be taught textually. The gamaka cannot be taught textually. 100 years ago, there was an attempt to write the gamaka. We are still fighting over how to read that. There was a book called Sangita Sampradaya Pradarshini written by an extraordinary scholar and a musician, saint-like person called Subbarama Dikshitar. And he codified the movements. He created a textual form for it so that we know that Gama, Pa, Ga, Sa, Re, Ga. How do I know it has to be moved? So he said, okay, I'll create one little. But we're still fighting over it. We don't know how to read it. Oh, did he say Sa, Re? Or did he say Sa, Re, Re? Because there is a pressure point of the voice that works. Did he say that or did he say this? We don't know. That's why you need a guru. So now the guru, as we've been hearing, does not expect you to analyze anything. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa. From Shankarabharanam, you will move to Kalyani if you move the ma. But the guru will say, without showing the ma, show me the difference between Shankarabharanam and Kalyani. That is when the entire 1000 years of texts will have to descend upon you. And how do they descend upon you? Through the Vaggeyakara Kriti and through your guru. Because we know, and in the Kritis it has been also demonstrated, that in Shankarabharanam, Sa, Re, Ga is almost always flat. Ga, ma, ga, because ma is close to ga for Shankarabharanam. Sari ga gari sani ri gari ri sa is how you sing Shankarabharanam. Sari ga ma will come because there is Vyanjana. Gamayati iti gamaka is also another definition. Gamayati in the sense refers to approaching. So it is a suggestion. It is already alluding to a madhyama which is higher. Sari ga ma is the distance. Ga ma will go there only. You can't move. Sari ga ma. Because that movement is then useless. Why are you moving it so much then? So, if you don't reach ma, you can still show the difference between Kalyani and Shankarabharanam. This a guru will tell you. But the guru will tell you when the guru thinks you are ready for it. And hence, and nowadays this is done a lot, and I don't know how far this will reach everybody, but I'm just saying it because this was taught to us. Abhyasa Gana Paddhati, when you are Pratama Abhyasa, when you start, Gamakam is not introduced. It is only Shuddha Swaram. Because you are now starting with the Paddhati that starts with Pata, Abhyasa. First is imitation. Even this thing, for those of you who learn Carnatic music, Sa Re Ga Ma Pa Dha Ni Sa, Maya Madhava Gaula is where you are first taught. But that is for the Veena. Because when you put your finger here, the first fret there is the lower Rishabha. But for the voice, Sa Re is very hard for children to achieve that difference. Sa Re is easy. So many sampradayas of Sangeeta will start with Sari, not with Sari. Because you can actually make a mistake. And lot of young children who come to me also, just for experiment, I try. Sari, they'll go. Sari, ga, they'll go. Sa and Ri are sung in the same place because they can't hear the difference. Hearing the frequency difference is also a training. So, for vocal music, you are given the Chatushruti Rishabha, which is the higher Rishabha. For instrumental music, especially with Veena, because that was the major instrument that was taught 100 years ago, in the fret lineup, that Ri is the first thing. So, when you are starting as a child with small fingers, that Ri is quick. It's the first fret. So, Maya Madhava. So, these kinds of things have happened. So, in the Abhyasa Gana Paddhati, what we have done is, we have adopted certain traditions that have existed in the Granthas, but they are generally ascribed to Purandaradasa, or a lot of thinking that happened around his time on what needs to be the way in which to take this training forward, because muscle memory has to be developed first. As I said, these frequency differences have to be developed so that there is a lot of complex work that will happen later where there is no time to develop this muscle memory. And hence, muscle memory has to be developed before you go on to that. Hence, the Abhyasa Gana Paddhati does this in very many ways. So, we start with what is called Sarali, which is Swaravali, which basically introduces you to the big frequencies, the Swaras, not the microtonal frequencies. Sa Re Ga Ma Pa Dha Ni Sa Ni Dha Pa Ma Ga Re Sa. And then various combinations so that your voice traverses. Sa Re Ga, Sa Re Ga, Sa Re Ga Ma Pa Dha Ni Sa, Sa Ni Dha, Sa Ni Dha, Sa Ni Dha Pa Ma Ga Re Sa. I'm singing it fast, but yesterday Shastriji was saying about the kalas, Ati Vilamba, Vilamba Chauka, Madhyama, Durita. In Karnataka Sangeeta, we start mostly with Chauka. Chauka, Madhyama, Durita we have. Sometimes Vilamba comes because It is very hard to control your voice or movement in extreme slow speeds. In extreme high speeds, it's very easy. So if anybody is singing very fast, they're actually doing an easier job. If somebody is, of course, there's an amount of training that you need to give in order to achieve the speed, but that's an easier thing. Because when you sing slowly, you have to traverse over more microtonal frequencies, the Shrutis as they are called. And you need extraordinary control of your voice and your hand in order to achieve that. So normally we have sort of by consensus said Chauka, Madhyama and Durita are the kalas in which we are going to teach. So first there is Pata, where you imitate. Whatever your guru is saying, you imitate. And then whatever number of times that sadhakam has to be done, you do it. Then you memorize it. Pata. So there is a very wrong thing that has happened in the last, I don't know, maybe 50 years, 70 years, 100 years, I don't know when it started, is to have books for Abhyasa Gana. If you give your child a book, you are taking away the opportunity to memorize. And hence, books are not allowed. In this modern times when people want aids for memory, still people have to remember, go back and practice. But as aids to memory, you can have even a recording. That if you make a mistake, listen again and correct your mistake. Reading is the worst intervention possible for this. So then there is the recall of repertoire. So from this we move to more complex things like alankaras. How much time do I have? 5 minutes. Okay. Alankaras are compositions which then sit on the saptatalas that Shastriji was talking about. It has, you are introduced to a very complex and very large number of cycles, not just cycles, intervals between beats. And over that you have to map music. And over that you have to map the 3 speeds. So once your voice is capable of this, and in this I wanted to actually say something about fractions. So you have a tala called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Tishrajati Triputa tala. Sariga, sariga, ma. Sariga, sariga, ma, riga, ma, riga, ma, pa. Sariga, sariga, ma, riga, ma, riga, ma, pa, ga, ma, pa, ga, ma, pa, da, ma, pa, da, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, sa, ni, da, ba, ni, da, ba, ni, da, ba, ma, da, ba, ma, da, ba, ma, ga. The whole thing is you are halving it. And you don't know, your body is doing it. This is fractions being done by your body. Simply by muscle memory, you are doing fractions. And this can go to a state of complexity where my guru's guru, Sangeeta Kalanidhi Mudiguntan Venkatramayar, has sung these pallavis, which are like, I mean, for people who are, familiar with the North Indian scheme, like Bandish, but composed, very arithmetically structured, but for Aksharakalas that were 128, with each beat, which are 4 sub-beats long, so it's 512, with 8 angas, and you sing one line over 512 beats. And then you do Raga Alapana and you do Swarakalpana, and you actually move around within those 512 beats in a very structured way and yet be creative. And yet every time you sing the phrase, it's different. To achieve that, you need to train your body to do fractions. Your hand is doing one fraction, but your singing is doing another fraction. Takademi, takajanu is what your hand is doing. But your mind is, and your voice is halving it, and then you're singing in quarters also. And then you're also mapping Tishram over it. Takita, 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 takademi, takajonu, takademi, takajonu, sariga, sarigama, rigama, rigama, pa, gama, pada, ma, padani. Sariga, rigama, gama, pa, ma, pada, padani, dani, dani, da, pada, pa, ma, gama, gari, gari, sariga, rigama, gama, pa. So the threes, and then the fives, and then the sevens, and then the nines, while your hand is still doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is all developing muscle memory. Once all this happens, then you come to the Vaggeyakara Kriti. Now you're armed, your muscle memory is complete. Then that takes over. And that we have seen is anyway another ocean that leads elsewhere. But this Abhyasa Gana Paddhati, that is steeped in bhakti. First of all, your first God is your Guru. You have said that for my dharma, this is my God. What the Guru will say, I will follow. And then comes everything else. So I think we don't have time for questions now. Yeah. So maybe you can individually ask me if you have any questions.
Yes. If there is more time left over, is there, you have completed?
This is unending. So.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Sorry, what's your name? Sushruti, Dr. Sushruti Santhanam. The name seems to be perfect for you, the way you explained everything to us. If you had been a music teacher, I think there would have been many more learning in my class. So